It's the Al Travis Show, nothing without you, so I appreciate you being here, and there's nothing without the great guests that we are lucky enough to get on, and that would include Senator Carla Nelson, and she is out of the St. Cloud area. 24 is her district number. As soon as we get her audio on, you are currently muted, Senator. There you go. Senator, how are you today?
Good morning. I'm great.
Good, fantastic. Thank you for being here. I really do appreciate it.
Sure.
All right.
I'm calling you from Rochester.
Well, that's give us folks who don't know exactly. Everybody's number 24. What is your district? Where around, or what do you cover for district?
Sure. My husband Terry and I live in Rochester, and I've represented this area for quite some time, but the redistricting did change it a bit.
Yeah.
And so my current district does include parts of Olmsted County, where I live, including parts of Rochester, Stewartville. And then it moves further to the west now, and it also includes all of beautiful Dodge County. So
nice. Okay. All right. So, and you've been in roughly background, how long you been in, Senator?
I was elected to the Senate in 2010 and have a couple years of House experience behind that.
All right, fair enough. You've been there and done that. That's why I want to ask you. As of today, and a couple of things you were involved in, I don't know that I believe we're even going to get close to getting anything done this session. I know it has to get done, but this is going to get brutal. Let's talk about a couple of things. Sure. I have what they call some Blue Dog Democrats come on pretty regular with us on this program, right? Mm-hmm. You put up a bill that says nothing more than boys and boys sports, girls and girls sports. I know protecting girls sports, what you called it, but I mean, basically that's what it said, right? I mean, it wasn't any more complicated than that.
Correct.
Party lines. Everybody went their side. Dems said no. Republicans said yes. Is there any reality, and do you believe there's any way those four blue dogs are anything but pretending if you can't even agree girls should be in girls' locker rooms and boys should be in boys? I'm sorry, if that's not middle ground, I don't know what is.
Yes, you're correct about that. Obviously, it's the right thing to protect women's sports. Title IX was designed just for that, and also, fortunately, obviously, most Minnesotans certainly believe in that. So, yeah, no, that was a very disappointing vote, and it does not bode well, I do not think, for anything other than hyper-partisan politics to continue. But we've seen that over and over this year. Those blue dog Democrats, or I think that's what they're called, or yellow dog Democrats, whatever they're calling themselves.
Whatever color, it doesn't matter.
Whatever it is. It's a good soundbite, but it's not shown up on the Senate floor. In other words, every vote has been decided by the majority, and there has not been a time where the majority lost some of those votes when needed. So
that's what I'm saying. There's nobody in this middle ground. Tell us about your student. Now, with this, is that done deal then? They voted it's out. This is done for the year, this protecting girls' sports?
Well,
is it done for the year?
I hope not. It's done in the Senate. Now, what's going to happen is the two bills are going to be reconciled. These would be the education policy bills, and then they're first going to be rolled into the education finance bill, both in the Senate and in the House. And then that bill from the Senate and the House will be different, and it will go to conference committee. And the House, fortunately, in this case, is tied, even Steven. And so we are very hopeful that the House will prevail and that we will protect girls and girls sports. And my amendment last week was very simple, even more simple. It just required that the sports are declared. They're for girls, they're for boys, they're co-ed, they're intramural. And so when kids sign up, they know what they're getting. And it would require, obviously, that the Minnesota High School Athletic League amend its regulations to allow for that. So it's really shocking that there's this clear disdain for protecting girls' sports for girls.
I don't know. I find it hard to believe there's disdain for it. I think what it is their team will not allow anyone to go off the rails. You know what I'm saying? You will be run against, you'll be primaried, yada, yada, if you don't hold the party line. I can't imagine you can find 30 people and not have one of them say, well, I get your point on girl sports. I just cannot believe that. Now, give me your student's first proposal. Tell us what that was all about.
Oh, sure, sure, sure. The students' first proposal is an education proposal. Actually, it's somewhat reminiscent of some of the things that I did or worked for when I was education chair. Number one, it puts the priority on the students and their achievement and how they are performing, how they're doing in school. And it does that by a couple ways. One thing it would allow is that it would give schools more flexibility in how to use the state dollars that we are sending them, significant amounts, over $21 billion going to our schools from the state of Minnesota. I think it might be up to 22 billion now. And of course, it's important that schools have some flexibility in how to use that. But in the first year of this legislative session, the Democrats pushed through again on a party line vote, every vote. No one voted no on the Democrats to increase a massive mandates, particularly on our schools. And I know you're hearing about that.
Yeah.
I've heard from all my school board superintendents about how even though there was increased funding, it wasn't enough to pay for all the unfunded mandates. So the proposal I'm supporting, students first, would obviously let school districts determine how best to spend that money in order to help their students achieve. So I think that certainly makes a great deal of sense. And that is really kind of the key thing, is to make sure that students actually are able to use the money can be used to help the students.
You're good at this. So I want you to read the tea leaves. Is this going to go anywhere? And I'm saying this in Al terms, but basically you are giving, with all the mandates and all the money that go to a school, you're saying to the superintendents, to the school boards, if it's unfunded mandates, you can decide whether you're going to do it or not. Right? Isn't that?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, it's very transparent. It has to be at a school board meeting where people that are elected to serve there are responsible for those.
Okay, but Senator, please, and God love you. These same people who forced those mandates a year ago, there wasn't a superintendent I talked to who didn't say this is going to choke us to death, but they passed it anyway. Do you in any way believe of those 4, 6, any of the other side are going to turn to your favor and say, you know what, you're right, Senator, we got this wrong, we should open it? They enforced that on them. Do you have any belief that, unless the what color is the sky in your world, do you believe that there's anyone that's going to turn that over and say, you're right, Carla, we'll do it your way?
They would only do that publicly on the voting board if they were sure that the proposal would be defeated.
Well, that's
Numbers game.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. It all makes sense, Senator. But I don't see any of this going anything but party line. One last one real quick, if you would. You've got a teacher pension reform bill, something. Could you describe that to what you'd like it to be? I'm involved and I only follow along because truth in advertising, my wife is a teacher. We're running up on 60. I will not say her age. Tell us how that works.
Yes, I'm glad to be on the teachers on the retirement pensions legislative commission on retirement and pensions. But I do have to be full disclosure. I'm a retired teacher, and I am one of those teachers called a tier 2 teacher, and that's kind of what the pensions bill is all about. Is trying to make it more equitable in the eyes of those tier 2 teachers, like me, for example. However, I have a higher fiduciary responsibility to make sure that what we do is
Yeah.
good legislative practice, good pension for all. You have to make it equitable for all generations of your pension holders. And so the key thing is, I think people know this, that prior to 1989, if a teacher who had started prior to 1989 was able to get a full retirement at a young age. In other words, the magic number was 90. That would be your age and your number of years of teaching. And if that equaled 90, then of course, you were able to take full retirement without any reductions at that magic number. But that was designed back then to help our schools, maybe in the same kind of position they're in now, where there were many very senior teachers often very good teachers, but there was a lot of need. And so the idea was to make it more favorable for older teachers, senior teachers with higher salaries to retire
Hmm.
sooner so that more younger teachers at lower salaries, I think there's about 29 steps on the salary
Hmm.
scale, could get into the system. That was only for a few years.
Yeah.
And I started teaching in 1992, and it wasn't available in 1992. So the key thing with this retirement now is we have to make sure that, number one, it's funded. So far, all the proposals, there's several of them that have been brought to the Minnesota Legislative Commission on Pensions and Retirement, have cost tens of millions of dollars. In fact, the
Yeah.
one that Senator Frentz is bringing that Ed Minnesota supports, it costs over $200 million of cost. And so that is paid for and that's state cost, by the way. So this is we have to make sure that what we do actually retains the pension so that
Yeah.
it is there when our teachers need it. And then we have to make sure that right now, what's happening is tier two teachers like myself, 50% of what I pay for my pension, in the employee or the employee share, actually is to pay for that early retirement of those who
Yeah.
came before me. See, now that is a very bad pension
Yeah.
plan.
I would throw this. I got to go to break because my wife, literally, how this affected us. My wife was student teaching. She was in that last whatever in teaching at school with a young man who got hired that year. So they're both in the same year. But because she was student teaching, quote unquote, didn't count, they changed the rule of 90, and it was a hard hit. The guy who she started teaching with retired at 57. My wife's retirement age is 67. Now, I get it. Rule of 90 doesn't fly. I understand it. But here's my point I would suggest to you before I go to break. This should be tiered in. It should come in because my wife this is the game when she went to school, went 4 years to school, was this close, and then the rules changed. You got to scale it back the same way. Maybe it's 60 and then it's 61. You got to scale it in. It shouldn't be an all or nothing right away because it just costs too much. And I agree that I'm caught in the middle of it. I just want to be honest about it. I got to go to break. I want to come back and get your assessment. I got a couple of just quick hitters that if the Democrats are going to vote for these things, there's no way we get a balanced budget. I talked about that with Senator Carla Nelson right after this.
All the special interests are represented in St. Paul. But who speaks for you? Center of the American Experiment.
2 minutes, Senator, but we're still on Facebook Live. Yeah, we're at, okay.
Sense solutions on education, taxes, crime, and energy. American Experiment is the trusted, nonpartisan voice of Minnesotans like you. We are working every day to make Minnesota a better, safer, more prosperous place. We are American Experiment. Go to americanexperiment.org to learn more.
There are many ways to explore Alexandria. Some like to experience the outdoors and all the fun winter in Minnesota can provide. Pick your favorite way to get in touch with nature. Others like to explore downtown in the warm comfort of a boutique or gathered around a table with friends. You can do all of that or relax and do nothing at all. Come explore Alexandria. Start planning at explorealex.com.
Easily offended? The Al Travis Show is not for you. The Al Travis Show. All sides are welcome.
Lucky to have our Senator Carla Nelson out of the Rochester area on the program with us. Senator, let me throw, besides, we talked already about protecting girls in sports, students first, and this is all coming down on ideological lines. There isn't a lot of middle ground. When the Dems were completely in charge 2 years ago, they gave away free school to illegal immigrants. You don't have to be Minnesotan. You can have free school. They were talking about that yesterday in committee, and it looks like that's going to stay. They're not going to budge on that. Minnesota Care, they decided to give illegal immigrants Minnesota Care. Figured there'd be about 7,000 that would sign up in the first 4 months. 17,000 have signed up, and that seems to be going nowhere. Minnesota Department of Education literally came out last week and said to the Trump administration, we are not going to stop DEI. And if Trump's a man of his word, he is going to cut funding to the fine state of Minnesota through the Department of Education. Does anybody on the other side seem to understand we have a $6 billion deficit running our way? We'll kiss the MDE money goodbye. We'll keep paying for everything for illegal immigrants that come here. And I'm not trying to be mean to them, but don't we have to take care of the Minnesotans paying taxes first? Senator.
Sure. Well, first of all, immigrants, we are a country of immigrants. My grandfather came here, came through Ellis Island. He's my namesake. So we are a country of immigrants, and that's a good thing. However, having people come here legally is an essential thing that far too many are not standing for. So that is greatly concerning. I think that it is a problem. What I would say is there's something that we have to understand, and I usually try and separate myself directly from federal government. That is its own thing, its own funding. Yep. I have no more control there than you do or anyone else does. However, the state of Minnesota, our state government, is where the voters have asked me to work and input things. And I'll tell you what's most challenging is one thing I want people to remember when they talk about federal funding. Federal funding comes with federal strings, and all government comes with government strings. Quite frankly, we should not be giving out money without government strings about what it's worth. So I don't think I think there's great concern about losing federal funds, especially at this time when the runaway previous legislature, full DFL control, trifecta, it was called, they spent through that $18 billion surplus, $18 billion, never heard of before, added $10 billion of new taxes at the same time. Those things should never go together. And the shocking thing is we're left with a $6 billion projected deficit. And some of my Democrat friends have tried to minimize that and saying, oh, it's just a projection. No, they have to account for that on their spreadsheet. We have a 4-year budget window, and that $6 billion projected deficit is part of that. So we have to be very clear about that, and we have to be very serious about that. And we also have to make choices. This is not the time to be shirking at federal funds.
No. Well, let me
in sports, for example.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of my point. If they were going to have $18 billion surplus, I only have 30 seconds, $18 surplus, and they raise your taxes, what do you think they're going to do when there's a deficit?
It's shocking.
They're going to raise taxes, people. Keep an eye on this. It's their way. If you have money and you raise taxes, what are you going to do when you don't? This is kind of easy.
It's crazy. I'm looking to the House, folks. The House is evenly tied. Anything that survives conference committee between the House and the Senate is going to need some bipartisan support, at least one vote. We need at least one person who is not tied to hyperpartisanship from the other side.
Senator, it is fantastic having you on the show. You can pick it up at Rochester KROC. I thank you very much for doing this with us. I really do. Thank you for taking the time.
Great. Have a great day. Stay tuned.
Senator Carla Nelson on the Al Travis Show.